Whether thou art a ghost that hath come from the earth, or a phantom of night that hath no home, or one that lieth dead in the desert, or a ghost unburied, or a demon, or a ghoul, whatever thou be until thou art removed, thou shalt find here no water to drink. Thou shalt not stretch forth thy hand to our own. Into our house enter thou not. Through our fence break through thou not. We are protected, though we may be frightened. Our life you may not steal, though we may be scared to death.
Welcome to Scared to Death, Creeps, Peepers, Roberts, and Annabelles. I'm Dan.
And I'm Lulu Marie.
No announcements this week, other than to say, we just both want to say thank you to all of you who took the time to review our show and rate it recently. We see it, we appreciate it, and it's just great motivation for us and just really helps the show out.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much for doing that.
Mm-hmm. And now, how many reported paranormal encounters of those submitted to my story at scaredtodeathpodcast.com do you have for us today, Lulu Marie?
Well, Daniel, I have 3 stories this week. Now, my first story I find to be really exciting. If you guys can remember all the way back in the beginning, one of the very first fan stories I told that's a fan favorite about this guy, Tom, and the husband, Paul, leaves the brother and sister home, but then they see him digging holes in the backyard. Okay, It's like a very well-loved fan tale. Well, this week, I have another tale that is kind of tied to it, but not really, but kind of. You'll see. It'll make sense. It's very hard to explain without
it'll make sense once we hear it. Okay.
You'll be like, what?
Okay.
And then I have a very short story about the possible energy of an object meant for someone, possibly. And then my final story, we meet maybe a new character, a new thing to be afraid of, the Flute Man.
The Flute Man.
It's hard to take that seriously.
Sure,
I know.
yeah. It's not a scary name, but okay.
But
all right.
That is how he's described.
Some evil Pied Piper.
Kind of.
I have my standard 2. For my first, we're going to head to Korea. I love going over to a lot of countries in Asia to hear their horror lore. I think that continent has overall probably the best horror lore in the world.
I would agree.
But we're going to head to Korea to hear about one of their most disturbing ghosts, or claims of this ghost, the Kong-Kong Gwishin. The ghost of a schoolgirl, doomed to haunt in death those who remind her of her tormentors in life.
Okay.
And then my second story will take us to Poland.
Hey.
Yep, to the little Polish border town of Gubin, where an anonymous man on Reddit claims his parents experienced something truly horrifying a long time ago.
Okay.
So you show me those socks, and I'll tell you my first story.
Well, I'm going to show you socks of something that you really hate. It, the clown.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I do hate, not a fan of clowns, but man, I respect the horror of the book It.
Well, sure.
That's probably I think that was the first book I read as a kid that really scared me. But also loved. Because, because I read it when I was about the age of the kids in that story, I believe in Derry, Maine. It's been so long now.
Mm-hmm.
But in that little town in Maine, I think it's Derry where so many of those stories are set. But just it felt like, I would just imagine me and my friends.
Sure.
Around town, what if some monster was chasing? It just felt so possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that monster, just so well defined and memorable. And oh man, just truly terrifying.
I wonder if that's why so many tweens and teens get into horror. Or, it's we enjoy the adrenaline spike. We're not old enough to do a lot of things, or can't go to bars, or can't we're not driving yet. We can sneak out, but it's just not that exhilarating. So we get drawn into horror, and it has our adrenaline pumping. And so often horror stories have teenage kids.
Yeah.
So then we just relate to it, and we just work ourselves up.
You're more scared of the world at that age.
Yeah, less control over it, less knowledge of it.
Yeah, less knowledge of it. You look to your parents for safety. You're, as an adult, maybe you feel a little more capable if an intruder came into the house.
Mm-hmm.
You feel, at least, even if it's not true, that you could handle it more effectively. But as a kid,
I sure could not.
Yeah, but as a kid, there's so many more things to be afraid of. You are more powerless. You are more helpless. Your brain is not developed as much. You're physically weaker. There's just so many things, and you just don't have the experience of understanding how things work. I mean, I remember it's you get somebody telling you a good story, when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, I for sure would be like, oh my God, really? That's a thing? And I'd have nightmares.
That's true, because you know so little about the world.
Yep.
Yeah. To be clear, an intruder breaks in, I'm just like, Dan? I just immediately turn into a small child.
Okay, fair enough. Time now. We're just going to jump right into this first one. Time now for the tale of the Kong-Kong Gwishin. Today's first story takes us to South Korea, to the shadowy edges of one of the East Asian nation's most chilling ghost stories. For around 30 years, different versions of the same dark story have passed between school children, whispered in the backs of classrooms, in the halls of schools, and in the homes of students and former students. A tale of a dreadful spirit who drags herself down empty hallways with her broken, bloody limbs. A ghost who doesn't walk, she crawls, slowly, steadily, coming for you. She's called the Kong-Kong Gwishin. In Korean mythology, Gwishin are ghosts. We've encountered some of them here before, back in episode 181, A Spirit Without a Face, and also in episode 118, Bad Reflections. Specifically, they are the spirits of those who have not fulfilled their life's purpose, the restless dead, cursed to wander the earth, unable to pass on over to the other side, and filled with intense emotions like rage, betrayal, or sorrow. The Gwishin are jealous of and full of hate for the living, and the Kong-Kong may be among the most wrathful of all of these types of spirits. The Gwishin is called Kong-Kong due to the disturbing sound she's said to make as she moves. Stories of the Kong-Kong ghost or the Kong-Kong Gwishin seem to have originated back in the 1990s. And according to these stories, the ghost now known as Kong-Kong was once a high school girl whose name has been lost to time. She was quiet, maybe a bit strange, and often bullied. Her classmates called her a freak and other names. They pulled cruel pranks on her and frequently humiliated her in front of the others. They did things like tricking her into confessing her love to a popular boy in the grade above her, only for him and everyone else to laugh in her face. They made her life hell. And as time went on, their bullying, as it often does, steadily grew worse. She was pushed around, tripped in her school's hallways. She'd have trash thrown on her as she sat in a stall in the bathroom. And then finally, some of her worst tormentors killed her. They chased her through the school hallways, demanding she give them any money she had with her. They threatened to beat her up if she didn't. No one helped her as they ran her down. She ended up running up the stairs, all the way up to a door to the rooftop that someone had left unlocked. And up and out onto that rooftop she ran. Her tormentors then chased her to the edge of the roof. She begged them to leave her alone. They laughed at her, insulted her, and kept approaching. When she told them she was scared that she would fall, they laughed and told her to go ahead, jump. No one will miss you if you do. And then in a panic, hurt and afraid, she fell. Or was she pushed? Some stories say her death was more than a very cruel accident. Either way, she plummeted multiple stories to the hard, unforgiving concrete below, and when she hit the ground, her legs gruesomely shattered on impact. It was a mortal injury, and yet she wouldn't die right away. Instead, her body would lay broken and twisted, her blood pooling around her while students gathered and screamed. No one rushed to her side. She died slowly, in total agony, and completely alone. It's no surprise her spirit didn't leave the earth. In the years since, the Gwishin, now known as Kong-Kong, is said to visit not only various high schools around South Korea, but also apartment buildings and other large structures with multiple floors, long hallways, and rooftop access. Any building that reminds this wandering, angry, and crazed spirit of the place where she died. She doesn't walk anymore. She doesn't run from her tormentors. Instead, she now pursues whoever reminds her of them. She drags her body across the floor, her gory, broken limbs moving at unnatural and deeply unsettling angles. Her head is often tilted further than any living person's head possibly could be, her mouth open wide, her eyes staring unblinking ahead of her and filled with rage. She's a terrifying sight to behold. But before you ever see her, you'll hear her coming. The wet, sickly sound of her dragging her busted limbs, the thump of her broken body. And while she moves slowly, she never stops. Alleged witnesses say she only comes out at night, and that she favors lonely stairwells and dark hallways. Some say that when she finally draws near, she'll ask you a question.
Do you think I'm pretty, even like this?
If you say yes, she'll kill you, thinking you're lying, thinking you're mocking her, setting her up to be laughed at for being a fool, just like the kids at school used to do. If you say no, she'll kill you for insulting her. Either way, you're dead. Over the years, stories of the Kong-Kong Gwishin have made their way online. I'll share 3 short, supposedly true encounters posted anonymously to Korean message boards that we have translated into English, and then following these, I'll share a more detailed reported encounter. First, user at MinjaiXX posted, "When I was in high school in Busan, I had cleaning duty after class. I stayed late to sweep the 3rd floor. Everyone else had gone. I heard something dragging down the hall. I called out thinking it was a janitor, but no one answered. Just that noise. I ran into the classroom and locked the door. I waited almost 10 minutes before I heard it stop, right outside. What else could it be if not the Kong-Kong Gwishin?" Next, user SeoulMidnight33 posted, "One night I was visiting a friend at his apartment in Seoul. We were smoking on the rooftop when the elevator broke down, so we had to take the stairs. Around the 10th floor, we heard this thumping sound from below, like someone hitting the steps, but slow. Like one limp thud every few seconds. My friend started freaking out and wouldn't look back. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a girl, crawling, one leg badly twisted, the other leg maybe gone, eyes locked on us. We ran the rest of the way down. Only later did I hear the name Kong-Kong Gwishin. It was her." And now for the third and last of these brief encounter claims. User at Ghost Korea 1999 posted, "My uncle worked security in a high school in Incheon. He told me he quit after something happened around 2 a.m. one night. He was making his rounds and heard crying from a 3rd floor bathroom, girls' restroom. He pushed the door open and saw something in the mirror behind him. A teenage girl in a blood-stained uniform, sitting on the sink, looking badly hurt even though she was not screaming in pain. Too hurt to just be crying in a way one would do if they were sad instead of being in great pain. Her legs were bent backwards, badly broken and bloody. He gasped and turned around. No one was there, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is that after she vanished, the crying didn't stop." And now for the final encounter claim shared anonymously in 2022 by a woman who just moved to Seoul with her husband. This story was, like the others, posted in Korean on a paranormal forum. "My name is not important. I don't even want to say exactly where this happened. Somewhere near Gong-Sogu in western Seoul. I moved into a high-rise apartment there in 2022 with my husband. Everything about the building seemed normal. A little old maybe, but affordable. Nothing fancy, but quiet and clean with friendly neighbors. We felt lucky to find it and afford it. We moved in and lived on the 14th floor that had a great view of the city, but we were never able to enjoy it. We hadn't even fully unpacked when it started. The weirdness began on our 2nd night there. Around 3 a.m, I woke up to an odd, faint sound coming from the hallway outside our unit. We lived near the end of the hall, so not much foot traffic. I could not understand what was making the sound. I kept listening, half asleep, then I heard it again. A heavy dragging noise, like someone pulling a bag or maybe shuffling in flip-flops, but slower and wet. My first thought was that it might be someone drunk, or maybe a neighbor with a disability. I was very tired from the move, and we went back to sleep. The next day I was so busy, I didn't think of it much again, and I was not scared. But the next night, it happened again, a little earlier, maybe around 2:45 a.m. The same sound. I told myself that it must be a neighbor who works late or likes to stay out until early in the morning. They must live next door or very close by. But then I heard something that made my blood turn cold. My door handle rattled. Gently at first, then harder. This was no neighbor. This was someone trying to get into our apartment. I woke my husband, but by the time he sat up, it had stopped. Everything was quiet. He said I dreamt it. I knew he was wrong, but there was no use in arguing. And after another long day, I soon fell back asleep. It happened again the next evening, for the 3rd night in a row. It didn't wake me this time, but it happened. I know it did because I had left my phone recording by the front door. I didn't tell my husband. When I listened the next morning, I almost dropped my phone. At 2:52 a.m., I could hear the same sound again, muffled, but I could still hear it. It sounded like dragging, something shuffling down the hall towards our apartment, and then my door handle. You could hear it jiggling, and then you could hear a voice, soft, barely audible, but it said something in Korean.
Do you think I'm pretty?
I wanted to show my husband, but instead I erased the file immediately. I worried that I had cursed myself by just hearing it once. I didn't want to curse him or risk ever hearing it again. It still upsets me today to think of it. I hoped I was being pranked, but I didn't believe that. The voice, it didn't sound human. I worried then it was a Gwishen. The next night, I didn't want to hear it. I did not try to record it. I told my husband I had been having trouble sleeping. I asked if I could play soft, soothing music to help me sleep that night, and he agreed to it. I wanted something to block out the sound I'd been hearing, the Kong, Kong, Kong. And it worked. But now I wondered, what if it came back? What if it tried to get in? I wondered, what if it would come every night until the door was unlocked? Would my husband ever forget to lock it? Would I? I needed to know if it was coming back. 2 nights later, I stayed up. I waited for my husband to fall asleep. Then I snuck out of our room and sat silently in the living room, staring at the door in the dark. I wanted so badly to hear nothing, to go back to my bed and know that it was over. But at 2:57 a.m., it started again. Slower this time, louder, closer. Then I started to see things I hadn't before. First, I saw its shadow under the door. Then I saw the tips of fingers, pale, broken-looking fingers. They curled upward and scratched at the bottom of the inside of my door, barely making a sound. So my husband remained asleep. I was too scared to cry out for him. My mouth went dry. I didn't move. I don't think I even breathed. And I heard the whisper again.
Do you think I'm pretty? Even like this?
I wanted to scream, but I couldn't, and I couldn't move. But I began making some kind of noise, a whimpering I didn't even realize was happening. It awoke my husband, who came out of the bedroom looking for me, sleepy-eyed, asking what was going on. I turned to him, and in that instant, the shadow vanished. The scratching stopped. He thought I was hallucinating. He told me it was because I continued to not get enough sleep. He said I had to sleep. That was the last time I waited by the door. But I would make sure to get up and check it, to make sure it was locked every night after my husband fell asleep. And then for the next 2 weeks, it woke me up each night. Every night between 2:45 and 3 a.m., I heard it moving in the hallway. Sometimes it walked back and forth like that for maybe an hour. Other times it would just stop, but then I would hear knocking, and not just on our door, but on others too. Finally, my husband heard it too, and one night it sounded like it was coming from the apartment above us. He knocked on their door the next day, thinking whoever had been scaring me must live there. But it was a small old grandma who answered, maybe 80 years old. She was so confused by my husband's questions. Whatever we had heard, it was not from her. The next night, it was out in the hallway again. My husband got up to check, cracked the door open, but saw nothing. He spoke with the building's security, but they never found anything. Then one night, another neighbor, a quiet woman in her 60s, knocked on our door at noon and asked if we'd heard her. I didn't ask who she meant, I just nodded. And I must have looked as afraid as I felt. She said in a whisper, "She's been here before, on the 10th floor. They moved away. Then she followed someone else to 12. Now I guess it's your turn." I asked her who she was. She told me, Kong-Kong Gwishin. She also told me what might happen to us if we opened the door and saw her, if she could see us when she asked us if we thought she was pretty or not. We moved out a week later, but sometimes I still think I hear her. I wake up late at night, even now, to that same sound. And that is all that person wrote about that experience. Whether or not the Kong-Kong Gwishin is real, stories like these persist in South Korea, especially in cities packed with towering schools and apartment complexes. So if you find yourself in Seoul, or Busan, or in any other place with a school or other building at least a few stories in height, a roof you can access from a stairwell, and long hallways, pay close attention to what you hear. And if you hear her, run away from that sound. Don't wait for her. Don't look back at her. Don't wait for her to ask,
Do you think I'm pretty? Even like this?
That's so terrifying.
yeah, they have really creepy stuff in South Korean horror lore.
I know, I don't care for it. Like, Korea's not necessarily high on my list of places to go anyways, but stories like this just get it further and further down.
Yeah, they have a lot of like, I've noticed like a lot of body horror in their stuff. A lot of like gruesome, gory images, people very especially mangled. People who died especially tragically.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty hardcore about their horror over there.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate as a horror fan.
I like it
Yeah.
at a distance.
Yeah.
I'll enjoy it from America.
I have just 2 images, no pictures, of course, or photos with the stories. But this first one, just an illustration of the Kong-Kong Gwishin by Casey the Creative on DeviantArt.com.
It's just a creepy photo.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what I envisioned, but it just says, found you.
Found you. And then this next one, I tried so hard to find another image of this supposed entity online, but no dice. But searching, however, led me to this photo, and it's so ridiculous. Okay. So this lady looks like she's in distress. She's on like a moving sidewalk. This photo was attached to a story published in the New York Post here in the U.S. and in the Daily Mail in the U.K. in 2023. It's said to be a photo of a 50-year-old female Thai passenger who had to have her leg amputated after getting it caught and mangled in a moving walkway at the Bangkok airport. She allegedly tripped over her pink suitcase before her left leg was dragged into the mechanism at the end of the, they call it a travelator. To quote the Daily Mail, horrified passerby fumbled to turn off the emergency switch as the machine continued tearing through the limb's muscle, tendon, and bone. A medical team eventually had to cut her leg off from above the knee, according to airport officials. She was then taken to a hospital in the capital for emergency treatment. And I'm putting this picture here because bullshit. I know neither the New York Post or the Daily Mail are known for incredible journalism, but that is so absurd.
So, okay,
there's no way that is true.
Well, there's no way that this is an accurate depiction of that happening. I'm going to go with, I guess it could happen, but I have
it could happen, but it didn't happen here.
Not in this photo because there is absolutely no blood, no gore. It basically just looks like a woman sat down on an escalator and then they photoshopped half of her leg out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like so clean. She doesn't even really look upset.
Nope, she looks like she probably like got faint. Had some there were people attending to her, so maybe she fell down. She had like a dizzy spell or something, or she had a prosthetic leg. I don't know, but not even that because it's like the angle that her jeans are cut off.
No, the whole thing feels like bullshit.
Yep, it doesn't match up with like the end of the moving sidewalk. Also 57 years old.
Well,
if she's 57, I want to find out what her skincare and diet regimen is.
She's Korean.
I know they're fanatical about their skincare culturally more than we are, but still, she looks incredible for 57 years old.
Yes, but also not American. So,
well, they're doing a lot of stuff right over there.
No, don't get me started on what's in our food.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that is fantastic if she's 57 years old.
I mean, I feel like when I meet people of other cultures where their like lifestyle is incredibly different than ours, I'm like, I don't think I looked like that when I was that age. Like, I'm just shocked at how much younger everybody looks at whatever age they're at in comparison to how I looked at that age.
Okay.
So I believe that she's 57.
Oh, all right. Well, good for her.
Hate to tell you. Can I tell you a really fucked up story really quick?
About an escalator?
Yes.
Sure.
Because I don't believe, first, also, like on this story, I am trying to envision how any person
would lose a whole leg to a moving sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, this
you'd have to have a little tiny leg. If you had a tiny, very thin little leg.
Well,
yeah,
you know who does?
Little dogs.
Yep.
I know this is a sad story.
I watched it happen.
I know you told me that it's upsetting.
I was at the Beverly Center.
Yep, in Los Angeles, and a little dog got caught.
Yep, its foot got.
Oh, okay. Let's pretend it was fine.
Yep.
It pinched it and then it was fine.
I almost threw up. It was so upsetting.
Oh my God.
And then meanwhile, I was so mad at the owner because I'm like, who sets their dog down on a fucking escalator? That's exactly why you don't do that. That's why they tell you not to like be careful with like babies, small children, blah 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 blah.
You don't have
I feel like
you don't have to be
full-size
smart
adults
to have a dog.
I know. I feel like full size or kids or a driver's license, or vote. But the thing is like when I look at this escalator, this isn't in some like it doesn't appear to be in some like defunct situation where it's like it's not being worked on. It's just like,
Right.
This is just a functioning escalator.
Yeah.
Current, like it's not old, it's not rickety,
Yep.
it's not janky. Sorry, I'm searching for the words.
I know.
So I'm just like, this is just complete nonsense.
I just love that they tried to pass that off. And the pictures are at Scared to Death Podcast on Instagram and Facebook if you want to check them out.
And the dog was fine.
The dog was totally fine.
Toto was okay.
Totally fine. She just made all that up. Are you ready to leave South Korean horror folklore and head to your motherland for just a creepy little tale?
Yes.
As I mentioned up top, today's second story takes us to the little Polish town of Gubin, where an anonymous man on Reddit claims his parents experienced something truly horrifying long ago. Before I share it, let's just learn a tiny bit about where the story's set. The small town of Gubin is located on the eastern banks of the Nessa River, less than 2 miles away from the German border, where there's another town named Gubin. It has a total area of a little less than 8 square miles, but the actual residential area of urban space only takes up 1.5% of the area. The rest of the land is rural and used for agriculture and forestry. Along the edge of Gubin is a quaint range of rolling hills, painted with conifers and pine trees and babbling brooks and wildflowers. Based on the pictures I've seen online, it looks like a picturesque fairy tale landscape. You would never know just by looking at the hills that they were once the site of ungodly, gruesome horror. You see, a century ago, Gubin was a flourishing town of industry, well populated, lots to offer. Lush vineyards overlooking the river, a bustling downtown with restaurants, bars, and shops, and most incredibly, a well-preserved architectural remains of the original medieval settlement. But then, most of that was senselessly destroyed. During World War II, Gubin was turned from a burgeoning modern city into a bloody battleground. The most severe damage was wrought during the Soviet Army's Vistula Oder offensive, when bombing and gunfire obliterated the city's infrastructure, and the remains of Gubin's ancient architecture and Gothic churches was set on fire. To add to the town's dark history, the forest surrounding Gubin was used as a Nazi concentration camp. In August of 1943, Konig Park, a Nazi concentration camp for forced laborers, was opened in the Gubin forest near the hills. It was one of the 102 detention centers operating under the command of the Gross Rosen concentration camp. Konig Park primarily imprisoned Jewish women and girls from Hungary and Poland, as well as prisoners of war from Italy and France. Each day, about 1,000 prisoners were forced to work at a nearby Nazi radio equipment factory, a factory that was originally founded by 2 Jewish businessmen who had been forcibly seized from their home and from their factory 5 years prior. As the German military force began to collapse in 1945, Konig Park was closed down and its prisoners transported to the Bergen-Belsen extermination camp on a trek known as the Death March. Prisoners who were unable to walk, of which there were about 150, were slaughtered in a mass execution shortly before the camp was abandoned. Then, when the war ended, Gubin was rebuilt as much as it could be after countless lives were lost forever. Due to the number of corpses that bloodied its soil, the Gubin Hills were christened with a new, more sinister, and more apt nickname. Time now for the tale of Death Mountain. This story was told to me by my mother. It happened a long time ago in Poland before I was born. I can't remember the exact date. In my hometown in Poland, where both me and my parents grew up, there's a place that the locals call Death Mountain, but in reality it's more of a collection of hills. During World War II, there was heavy fighting in that area in a small concentration camp, and a lot of people died. Even after the war ended, Death Mountain kept claiming lives. While trying to demine the hills, a bunch of people got blown up by unexploded bombs and mines. Now for my story. This happened when my mother and father started dating, when they were teenagers. For their first date, my dad thought it would be cool to take her to Death Mountain. Don't ask me why. I'm not even sure myself. If you forget the history, it does provide a beautiful view. He says that by that point in time, the locals had started using the hills again for recreational purposes, but still, the name Death Mountain doesn't give off a great date vibe. Anyway, they got there in the late afternoon. It was a cloudless day and really hot, but neither of them minded. They hiked all around the hills and walked along the river for hours, talking the whole time. Everything was great, until night started to fall. My dad suggested they go sit by this little collection of trees near the top of one of the hills to watch the sunset together. My mother agreed, but then as soon as they started walking towards the trees, she felt like something was wrong. My mother, you need to understand, is a very practical, rational, and sensible Polish woman. Not at all the type to exaggerate or to tell tales. She's always been like that, apparently. Even as a teenager, her dad would say he was certain his daughter was an old, stern woman trapped in a young person's body. So despite her strange apprehensions, my unsilly mother just kept marching towards the trees. When they reached the trees, my dad laid down his jacket for her to sit on, and they sat with their backs against one of the trunks. He kept talking to her about something or another, but my mother wouldn't hear a word he was saying. She was too distracted. She now felt with absolute certainty that they were being watched by someone who was very nearby. She scanned the area looking for the stranger whose eyes she was certain were fixating on her and my dad. As high up on the peak as they were, she had a good view of the surrounding hills, and she should have been able to spot whoever this was. But everywhere she looked, the forest was empty. She and my dad were completely, utterly alone. Still, she felt certain someone else was there. And then she started to think that whoever was watching them, they were not below, but above. They were hiding behind some trees at the very top of the hill. She called out in that direction, asking if anyone was there. My father offered to go check, but my mother grabbed him by the arm, told him not to. She looked scared, even though they had actually not seen anyone. One time when I was very little, I remember asking my mother how she knew someone was staring at them if she didn't see them around. She responded very plainly that she knew they were being watched the same way that she knows when I'm lying about having brushed my teeth. That there are some things you don't need to see proof of to know that they're real or that they happened. You just know. Back up on Death Mountain all those years ago, after a few more minutes, my very serious mother, who kept looking up at the same spot on the top of the hill, abruptly shivered, turned to my father and said, "We need to leave right now." My dad was taken aback and more than a bit confused, but he didn't argue. He just nodded, took her hand, and down they went. Some years later, shortly after they got married, my dad returned to that same little collection of trees on Death Mountain with a metal detector. He was and still is fascinated by the war and enjoys looking for war items around Poland and Germany and other places around Europe. The day he returned to Death Mountain, he didn't expect to find much, since the hills had been searched so many times before. But lo and behold, when he scanned the area up above the spot where he and my mom first sat together, up behind the very same trees where my mom was practically convinced someone was hiding, the metal detector went crazy. With the help of two of his friends and a few shovels, they found the fragmented remains of a Soviet soldier. My dad, even though any weapons he might have had were no longer with him, based on his uniform and location, believes he was a sniper. Someone whose orders would have been to watch the hill beneath them, looking for and then shooting any enemies they saw. And now this time, he was the one to shudder. He suddenly felt like someone was there, and that they were watching him again. Was it the same thing that watched them before, the ghost of the soldier buried there? My parents seemed to think so. My dad has gone back to Death Mountain a few times since then, but my mom has never joined him. I believe very strongly that Death Mountain is haunted. And although it goes against every fiber of her skeptical, rational being, my mom does too. After all, she's felt the proof. The eyes of a dead sniper have found and watched her.
How uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's already going
Feel
to...
that energy?
Well, yeah, and it's already, my opinion would be that it's already going to be such a heavy, dark, uncomfortable place to be in.
Yeah.
And so, then you're going to start to wonder, like, am I manifesting it myself?
Right.
Because I know what has occurred here. But it sounds like they felt really comfortable being there before it grew dark. And
yeah, the way the storyteller set it up, where it's like it has already started to be. He doesn't say exactly when it happened, but far enough away from the war where people were just going up there for fun or whatever and weren't thinking about, what had happened there previously. They were kind of like reclaiming it.
Yeah, which is also kind of crazy.
But also you can't just, you don't want to just avoid it forever.
I would. I'm good.
I always think in some of those situations that if you go, especially probably in Europe, especially where there's been so many battles throughout all of recorded history, and crazy fatalities, way back before World War II, and there's just been so much that most of the continent has seen just so much horror.
Battle to me is quite different than concentration camp.
Well, medieval battles back then, it wasn't yes, there's the people fighting.
Yeah.
But then there's the village raided afterwards where they would just indiscriminately slaughter women, children, unarmed old men, and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, there's death
you
and
know.
destruction everywhere, but concentration camp just is
Sure. Yeah. And it's so recent.
next level.
Yeah. I have a few pictures. This first one, just the Gubin Hills.
Yeah, really pretty.
Yeah, just
You
via
know, lush and
yeah.
Yeah.
This is via discovergubin.eu. This next one's so sad. What's lost here? The remains of Gubin's
Yeah.
Gothic church destroyed in World War II via medievalheritage.eu.
it is such a bummer because you can see how cool it would have been.
And that it lasted for years, hundreds and hundreds of years, and then just they just bomb it, just idiots.
Mm-hmm.
And then view from part of Death Mountain towards Gubin, and on the other side of the river of the German city of Gubin. This is circa 2002 via LorenzKinsleyphotography.com.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is really like mountains to stretch.
Yeah. Rolling hills.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Well, it's fun to go to Poland.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us there.
One of the many little towns there.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a Layla?
I do. I got a yellow one.
Yellow Layla?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she matches your King Gizzard shirt.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're on theme. And, yellow is the color of the summer. Butter yellow.
Oh, is it really?
Oh, yes. It's everywhere. Okay, well, are you ready for my first of 3 stories?
I am.
Okay, let's go. Hi, Lynze. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hello. First off, I just started listening to Scared to Death a few months ago. I'm still catching up and listening totally out of order. But I had to pause midway through episode 31 to write this. Lynze, the story you told about Tom and the house with the digging husband, I don't even know how to explain the way I felt hearing it. I was standing in my laundry room, folding a pile of towels, when I realized my hands were shaking. I had to sit down because something so eerily similar happened to me. Not word for word, but the bones of it. The new house, the digging, the strange behavior. It was like I was hearing a twisted echo of my own story. I've never written into a podcast before, and I wasn't even sure I'd ever share this with anyone, but after hearing that tale, well, I feel like I need to get this out. This happened in the spring of 2020, right as everything was shutting down and the world felt upside down. My sister, Amina, had just moved in with her husband, Raphael, into a big old Victorian house outside of Baltimore. They got it cheap, like really cheap. And they were pumped because Raph works in contracting and could do most of the renovations himself. The place had good bones, but the inside was a mess. Outdated wiring, moldy drywall, weird built-ins, the whole 9 yards. I live in Philly, and since I'd just been laid off due to COVID, I figured, why not go spend a couple weeks helping them out? I hadn't seen Amina in a few months, and we figured we'd make it fun, like a grown-up sister sleepover, but in a creepy house. When I got there, it was clear that the place had been empty a long time. Dust covered everywhere, cold drafts in weird spots, and you could tell people had lived there, but not comfortably. The house had this paused midlife kind of feeling, like whoever had been there before just stopped, walked out, and never came back. Still, I settled in. We set up camp in the upstairs guest room with air mattresses and string lights. We laughed about how the whole house gave off Scooby-Doo haunted vibes, but we didn't take it seriously. And then Raph had to leave. His mother got sick down in Florida. I mean, nothing COVID-related, thankfully, but serious enough that he needed to go for at least a week. So suddenly, it was just me and Amina alone in the giant, half-gutted house. And that's when it got weird. The first night without him, we heard someone walking around upstairs. Not creaking pipes, not house-settling noises, actual footsteps. Measured, pacing. Amina grabbed a wrench and I had a flashlight, and we went room to room, but we found nothing. The attic was empty. No animals, no squatters, nothing. We tried to laugh it off. But then it kept happening. Every night, same time, around 1:30 a.m., we'd hear footsteps above us. And Amina started sleepwalking, which she'd never ever done before in her life. I found her standing in the kitchen one night, staring at the back door. Her eyes were open but glazed over. She didn't respond when I said her name. It wasn't until I touched her arm, and then she screamed, like I'd pulled her out of deep water. We started sleeping with the lights on after that. And then there was the digging. This is the part that really made me stop folding the laundry when I heard Lynze read Tom's story, because just like in Tom's story, we saw Raphael digging holes. But here's the thing, he wasn't supposed to be there. It was day 5 without him, and we were eating breakfast when I looked out the back window and saw someone in the yard. A tall figure in a hoodie with a shovel, just digging, methodically. It looked exactly like Raphael. I called out, "Raph?" even though I knew he was in Florida. The figure stopped digging, looked up at the window. I couldn't see his face under the hood, and then he turned around and walked out of view behind the shed. I ran outside, Amina right behind me, but there was no one there. The ground was disturbed in 3 places. Shallow holes, maybe 2 feet wide, already starting to collapse inward. We tried to tell ourselves it was just a neighbor, a prank, anything. But how would someone get in and out of the locked gate without making a sound? We filled the holes back in that afternoon and didn't talk much about it. That night, Amina found dirt in the upstairs hallway, like someone had tracked it in from the outside, small pieces of it spaced every few feet like footprints. She lost it. She wanted to leave right then, but my car battery had died the day before, of course, and we weren't going to walk to a hotel in the middle of the night. So we locked ourselves in her room and stayed up with kitchen knives and flashlights, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. Well, at least not that night. But the next morning, we found the guest bedroom I'd previously been staying in completely trashed. Mattress flipped, drawers open, my clothes scattered everywhere, the closet door was wide open, and the wall behind it had something carved into it. Words, but they weren't in English. They looked like old runes or symbols from some language I'd never seen before. Some were circles with slashes, others looked like twisted versions of letters, like I almost recognized them. They were deep, like someone had taken a knife or a screwdriver to the drywall. We left that day, took an Uber to a rental car place, and then drove to a friend's house in DC. Raphael came back the next week and swore he'd never been back to the house since he left. Showed us his plane tickets, his phone location history, everything. I believed him. I still do. But the creepiest part? A month later, Amina called me in tears. She and Ralph were fixing the backyard fence and decided to dig out one of those weird holes properly, just to see, I don't know. They found a small box wrapped in oilcloth, buried maybe 4 feet down. Inside was a matted clump of what looked like hair, 3 blackened teeth, and a strip of leather with more of those same symbols burned into it. They called the cops, but there was nothing to identify. No body, no crime scene, just something rotten and old and hidden. So yeah, when I heard Tom's story, it was like hearing a version of our nightmare all over. The house bought cheap, the renovations, the husband digging, the sister left alone with her sibling. Even the sleepwalking. Too many overlaps to ignore. But also just different enough. These stories don't repeat. They echo, changing shape just enough to slip through the cracks. I don't know what was in that house or what Rolf unearthed before he left, but I know something wasn't right. Anyway, thanks for giving people like us space to share this stuff. It makes me feel a little less crazy knowing someone else was out there and went through something similar. Stay safe and stay out of the shadows. Zara.
Thank you, Zara.
So uncomfortable.
Yeah, so uncomfortable. The most uncomfortable image for me was just if you looked in your yard at night, like your back fenced-in yard,
yeah,
and saw somebody digging holes.
Fucking A.
And then when you called out to them, they just kind of looked in your direction, but then just calmly sauntered off behind some building.
Oh my God.
Just that alone, paranormal, not paranormal. Not paranormal would almost be worse.
Absolutely.
Where I'm like, what kind of fucking
Psycho
maniac is digging in our backyard in the middle of the night or late at night, whatever.
Any time of day, quite frankly.
Any time of day. Some weird dude in a hoodie is just digging holes in the backyard. That's just such a weird thing to do. Any time of day. That would be a
really fun prank to play on a friend.
Yeah, if you had a friend who you knew wasn't quick
guns.
to shoot. Yeah, was calm, not real trigger happy, so you don't die. And you were able to just hide your identity with a hoodie.
Yeah.
and then just have your back to them.
Oh my
and
God.
then just start digging like little holes in their yard. I mean, you'd have to be a friend cool also with some property damage.
I mean, honestly, if our friends did it to us, I would lose my
God.
shit. But then once I figured it out, I would think it was pretty good.
Oh yeah, like if I could picture like Isaac just getting.
He's too recognizable. His size is too much.
Yeah, you'd have to really like wear
It'd
some
have to be,
baggy
like-
clothes.
Nah, it'd have to be like J-Dubs or like Ned.
Uh-huh.
You know, like somebody.
Like a little more standard size
Uh-huh,
guy.
uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Isaac's like the mountain. He's just.
I know he's pretty tall.
He
Big guy.
just can't blend in. You
yeah,
know.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I think Isaac would just start laughing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that would. Just thinking about like the layout of our house. Like we have a shed. So I was just thinking
Yeah.
about somebody like
They have a little place to hide.
scooching behind. My God. But there's nowhere for them
My
to go.
God.
So it would be so then I would be so freaked out. I'm like, you're trapped back there.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
Ugh.
cops. Thank
Yeah.
God we live next to a cop.
Yeah.
Like, excuse me, sir. Can you forward you a friendly neighbor check?
Hey, I know you're off duty. This is not even your state.
Yeah, but
But can you just come over and
I'm
look
just-
behind our shed?
I know your back is kind of fucked up right
Oh,
now.
yeah,
but Can you
exactly.
just come help?
I know you're on leave right now because of an injury, but could you anyway just come behind the shed?
Honestly, in this situation, like I'm so grateful that we have a lot of kids in our neighborhood because kids are just like loud and that's not
Yeah,
helpful
they'd
for
laugh
any.
and blow it.
Totally, they would
Yeah.
ruin everything.
Yeah. That was creepy.
Yeah,
And I like that little comment at the end about the echo. Like
Yes.
you said, the story. That was really good.
I know that kind of shook me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's head down to New Orleans.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, our favorite place, and hear a little story down there. Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to AOL Movie Phone. Just kidding. Hello. This story is 100% real and 100% weird. To this day, I still do not have a logical explanation. In October of 2017, I traveled to New Orleans for the first time. I was visiting a friend, and while he was at work during the day, I explored the city alone. New Orleans is truly an incredible place. So much history, culture, and energy just packed into its streets. I love to wander, so I popped into as many shops as I could, browsing through unique offerings. One particular item caught my eye, a beautiful 5x7 print of an ornate Venetian-style mask printed on aluminum. The black background made the mask appear as though it was floating in darkness, giving it an eerie, ethereal quality. I was captivated by it and immediately purchased it. When I returned home to Texas, I placed it on my mantle where it remained for months, admired and untouched. Then, in early 2018, I moved to Nevada to live with my sister and her boyfriend. Our apartment was a cozy 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit with each bathroom en suite to our individual rooms. Wanting to decorate my space, I placed the mask portrait on top of my bathroom cabinet alongside other trinkets. My sister noticed it one day and mentioned how much she loved it. Then, one night, I was startled awake by a loud bang from the bathroom. Half asleep, I assumed the cat had knocked something over, and I drifted right back to sleep. The next day, or maybe a couple of days later, I noticed something odd. The mask portrait was gone. At first, I assumed it had simply fallen, but when I checked, it was nowhere to be found. I pulled the cabinet away from the wall, checked the floor, the sink, even inside the drawers and behind other decorations. Every other decoration was still where I placed them, but the portrait had vanished without a trace. I told my sister and her boyfriend, and we all searched together, but the painting was simply gone. It made no sense. Even when we moved out a year and a half later, I hoped it would turn up hidden in some forgotten corner of the apartment. But when we emptied the apartment completely, the mask was still nowhere to be found. Years later, like around 2021 or 2022, I shared this story with some friends. One of them, a New Orleans native, listened intently before casually saying, the painting didn't choose you. I blinked, confused. What do you mean? I asked. Apparently, in certain voodoo and folk traditions of New Orleans, objects infused with energy or spiritual significances sometimes reject their owners. They might disappear, move on their own, or refuse to stay in one place. Some believe that spirits or unseen forces guide these objects to their rightful owners or take them away when they don't belong. Had I unknowingly purchased something more than just a piece of art? Had it carried something with it from the streets of New Orleans? Why did it reject me? I still don't have any answers, but to this day, I wonder where that portrait went and who, if anyone, has it now. Thanks always for your stories, Elle.
Thank you, Elle. I was cracking up my head a little bit where like that concept of an object rejecting its owner.
Yeah.
How you could just like, use that in certain circles to justify stealing people's shit.
Oh my God, let's do it.
Just like if you had somebody like if that belief
That's
system was
such
around.
a funny premise for a movie.
I was just thinking like
How you rob from your friends.
yeah, like you just your friends are just missing all this stuff, and then finally they come over to your house, you haven't been in a while, and like all of that stuff is just in your living room, and they're like, dude, you stole. Like, no. I didn't. It chose me.
You could make this into such an uncomfortable I think you should leave sketch.
Right, exactly. It rejected you. It chose me. That is not stealing.
Just the way it is.
But that is a fascinating concept that an object just could be like, nah, I'm not feeling your energy. Not right for you. I want to move on.
It made me think about this painting that we purchased in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking about that artist, Tanner. Oh, I cannot think of his last name. Really beautiful. But it's like, yeah, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking like about him being in the zone, painting, and like being inspired by something and, calling on his creative forces or his spirit guides or whatever way in which he feels most inspired. So, when I believe that when you're purchasing someone's art, you are purchasing a piece of their soul. It's like they've poured their energy, their heart, their soul, their time, their efforts into it. It's an exchange. And so to me, it makes sense that like you could call on a higher power, whatever your higher powers are, to help guide this process of what you're making. And then that spirit might be like, this is not for Elle.
Yeah.
Like it's going somewhere else.
It's a cool possibility to think about.
Yeah, I believe in that energy transfer so deeply. Okay, now, do you want to hear about what sounds funny but is not the
that's
Flute
right,
Man?
the Flute Man, yeah.
I know it sounds silly. I know.
I'm thinking of this, there's this, oh my gosh, and I feel bad. I can picture his face right now, but I cannot remember his last name. He's a comic I've known forever. I just haven't seen him in forever. His first name's Greg, and he had this really famous bit. It was like his signature bit for years was Flute Man Greg.
Okay.
So it's like I'll have to stop. I'll have to not think about him. I'm sure some of our people listening is like, oh yeah, that's that guy. He had Nate Bargatze, like Nate Land produces some podcasts now on YouTube, and I know he had one recently. He's been doing stand-up for like 35 years.
Is it going to drive you so crazy you can't focus?
No, it's out of my system now.
Okay.
I acknowledged it, and I can move on.
Okay, here we go. Hello, Lynze, Queen of the Crystals and really awesome socks, and Dan,
hello,
master of the suck and creator of nightmares and all things fuelish. Longtime listener, first-time writer here. These spoopy stories have long been a road trip for my fiance and I, and until recently, they've been just that, a great road trip spook. That is until something spooky happened to us. I wouldn't call it paranormal per se, but it did leave me creeped out. Shooketh, as the kids would say. I have changed our names to keep some semblance of privacy. However, anyone who knows me well enough will know this is me based off my family dynamic alone. Plus, I have told this story to anyone who's willing to listen to try and make sense of it. I digress. My fiance and I are recent transplants to Vancouver, Washington. If you aren't familiar with the area, it's pretty quiet with all of the charms of a small town, just with a meth problem amongst the homeless, of which there are a few. It's a hop, skip, and a jump from downtown Portland, being just a 10-minute drive across the I-5 bridge. Jared and I have been here for about 3 months now, and all in all, we're settling in fine. Oh, how rude. I've never even said my own name. I'm Mark, by the way. I'm 6'2" and a decently hefty fellow, and my fiance is 5'9" and a decent muscular build as well. I wouldn't say that I'm all that intimidating at first glance, or even a little bit once I start talking, but for the story, neither of those things matter. Based strictly on appearance in the dark, I feel as though a rather larger individual might be someone you wouldn't want to mess with. And with that being said, I'll now tell my story of what I like to call the Flute Man. A few nights ago, my fiance Jared and I took our 2-year-old Great Dane and our almost 11-year-old Border Collie out for their final walk of the night. We usually try to get that in somewhere before 10 p.m. This night, it was raining pretty aggressively, and we were getting rather sleepy around 8:30 after partaking in a little recreational marijuana. We typically stay on our apartment property at night, but lately have been venturing out onto our usual neighborhood walk, which is probably close to a 2.5-mile loop. As we were approaching our gate to leave the property, it was blocked by a woman sitting on a stool smoking. I guess it's worth noting that our property is a smoke-free property and people actually go outside of the gate to smoke, which is kind of weird if you ask me. Anyways, we decided to avoid the whole awkward interaction and go to a different gate and change up our plans. I'd been wanting to go across the street to this park we had been to before during the day, and it was also diagonally across the street from our complex. So we walked to the crosswalk and crossed the street, then waited and crossed again. So far, so good. So far, not spooky. Just the way we like it. As we passed the church that sits on the corner, the entrance to the park arrived. The rain had begun to pick up a little more, and it felt like the drops had gotten bigger, if that makes any sense. So even though we were dressed to stay warm and dry, it was still pretty doom and gloom out in the dark. We entered the park, and the dark was playing tricks on our eyes. We were jumping around, attempting to avoid puddles. Turns out the areas that looked like deep water were in fact just wet, heavily leafed areas. When we were about in the middle of the park, I had noticed up ahead that someone was walking towards the center of the park from the other entrance. For context, they were coming in from the right and entering at our left angle. I had mentioned to Jared that I saw someone and that it wasn't odd, but I didn't expect to see anyone else out in the dark and in the rain. It felt like just speaking of what I noticed out loud into existence had sealed our fate, for no sooner than those words left my mouth than that man stopped dead in his tracks. He couldn't have heard me, right? I mean, no way. I was speaking low and it was raining cats and dogs out there. I swear to God, it somehow got darker and everything felt like it was closing in around me, and my heart began to race. This man then made a sound I will never forget and yet have no clue how to explain. Over the rain and the sound of distant traffic, we heard what sounded like a strained flute. Just 2 quick sounds, and then he beelined it in our direction. My heart began to race, and I told Jared, "He's coming towards us." We moved with a quickness towards the entrance of the park that the man had come from because it led out onto the lit street corner. I felt so uneasy, and I kept saying, "I do not like this. I do not like this." Everything inside me wanted to run. Our dogs felt it too. My Great Dane began to bark, and if you know what a Great Dane bark sounds like, you know they're intimidating. However, that did not deter this individual. We made it out of the park and onto the street, but he was in hot pursuit. I kept trying to look back to see if he was following, but terror would not let me fathom much. We were walking as fast as possible, and Jared told me we're taking the next left onto another street and to quicken our pace. We took the left onto a smaller side street, but with lots of homes and lots of lights. The man still followed us. All I could think of was, I do not like this, and I'm going to have to fight for my life. And all I had with me were my keys. Jared gave me our Great Dane and pulled back, ready to fight if anything was going to go down. I kept my voice down and kept asking if he was still behind us. He was. We were approaching a busy street when I asked if he was still behind us. We both turned around, and whoever was following us had stepped off into one of the yards and disappeared. My nerves would not let me rest easy. We crossed the street and walked along the busy road, just along the road, never taking our eyes off the street we had just left. The unfortunate part was that we had to pass the park again to get back to our apartment. As we got closer, the same strained flute noise rang out in the distance, and my blood ran cold. We made it to the street crossing, crossed immediately, not even waiting for the light to change. The rest of the walk home, I was shaken to my core and walking so fast my poor elderly dog could barely keep up. Never in my entire 37 years of life have I ever been that scared as when I saw the Flute Man. Just writing this now, it's like I'm back there again. Every inch of me is covered in goosebumps, and I don't like this vibes. I'm proud to say I'm no Darren. I hope you all enjoyed my story and that it brought you as many goosebumps and yucky feelings as it did us. Keep up the amazing charity work and the awesome stories. We sure do love them. Mark and Jared.
Thanks, Mark and Jared. Yeah, that was creepier than I thought it was going to be with that title. And then
That was pretty funny.
And then I was thinking, how uncomfortable that would be. Just like, okay, you can choose. It reminded me of the story you told earlier about the person digging holes in the backyard.
Yeah.
You know, like how that's just such an inherently creepy thing.
Yes.
Another inherently creepy thing is just like somebody at night in the distance following you, also playing any musical instruments. Because then it just makes me think that, like, if it's not a ghost or supernatural, it's a human being who is wildly unstable.
Yeah. It's someone who's unwell.
Yeah, that's just a very weird thing to do. To be walking around at night playing a flute. And
The
like,
flute, I don't know why, it's like-
stalking people.
It's funny out of context, but it would be so creepy if it was happening to you.
Oh yeah,
Guitar, somehow less creepy.
I know. I was thinking about that too. The instrument I went to was a
Feels
saxophone.
like, flute feels like you could like beat somebody over the head with it.
Oh yeah.
And I think like being female, I'm like, it's a very rapey instrument.
Oh, just the shape of it. That's okay. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Makes me like doubly uncomfortable.
Like now I'm just trying to think like what would be the creepiest instrument if somebody's like stalking you around town late at night and they're playing an instrument while they're following you. What's the worst one?
I don't know, but really funny would be like a harmonica.
Yeah, there's a lot of like least scary ones.
A mandolin would be pretty funny.
Yeah, harmonica.
What about a
Not scary.
you know this one?
Yeah, accordion.
I'm just making the motion over here, you guys. Just pushing my hands together.
Tuba might be hard to make scary.
Air drums.
That's not a real instrument. But if they had like a little snare drum, that's not really scary.
That's not
Banjo's
very scary.
creepy to me.
Yeah, banjo's creepy because it has that like. Well, maybe it just feels creepy because of
Deliverance?
Sinners.
And Sinners, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. Clarinet's not
disturbing.
Well, it's not it's a terrible sound generally speaking. Clarinet's
Not a
like
clarinet fan, not even in jazz.
it's not there that often.
Yeah, it's not. It's super common. But there's
Yeah.
like Miles Davis and some guys who played the clarinet.
What if somebody chases you with a bass?
Like a bass guitar or like a big stand-up bass? If they're able to quickly chase me with a stand-up bass, then I'm scared because I'm like, they are very strong.
Such a funny idea.
Yeah.
How about a trombone?
Trombone, not scary.
I think it could be scary because it's pretty solid. They
Solid?
could like swing it and really knock you out.
Kazoo, not scary.
Does a kazoo really count as a musical instrument?
It's technically a musical instrument.
Triangle.
Okay, yeah. Cowbell, not scary.
Tambourine.
Triangle. Somebody that's
Tamborine's kind of scary.
Rhythm egg.
Tambourine. What's the one? I never got to play it. Oh, Mr. P. What was his? I cannot think of Mr. Pacifico. My music teacher. I'm so mad at him right now.
Yeah.
He would never let me play it. It's the one. It looks like okay, you hold it and it has a round top, like a handle, has a round top that has silver beads on it, and you put it in your hand and you turn it and it makes like shh, shh, shh.
Oh, I think I know
I
what
don't
you're
know
talking
what's that
about.
called.
Yeah, it's not like a super common instrument. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
I'm trying so desperately to remember his name. Then he became a deacon and he still wouldn't let me do it.
I had to get this out. Greg Warren is the comic. His name popped into my head. He's the guy, Flute Man Greg. He's a great guy, great comic if you want to check him out. And Random Flute Story, Emo Phillips happens to be another comic. I just think this is so funny.
Okay.
He's notoriously weird. Like amongst comics, touring on the road, he was the name that came up the most. And even though he's like from a generation before me, of like just doing the strangest but really funny but so weird stuff on stage. Kind of like the same sense of humor as my God, the guy from I Think You Should Leave.
Tim Robinson?
I can never remember his name. Tim Robinson.
I always want to call him Tim Robbins. And I know that's not right.
Tim Robinson's just like, it seems too normal of a name for how weird he is.
He's so great.
But
Friendship.
Yeah, such a good movie. But Emo Phillips, he would just do weird stuff that people would happen to see that he wasn't doing for an audience. And that was like what made these stories so funny. There's a bunch of these kind of stories, but one of them was I was working some club, whatever, Midwestern city, and the club manager, I think might have been Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And the club manager said that one time she was just driving, lives there obviously, driving across town during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, she's like, is that Emo? And he was just like, noon, 1 p.m., playing his flute as he's walking across a bridge, like the sidewalk, by himself, not with anyone, just like playing a little melody on his flute. And I'm like, that is odd.
But also, is he
pretty funny?
Is he a happy guy?
Yeah, I think he is pretty happy.
So maybe that just makes him happy.
Yeah, it just amuses him just to do weird stuff.
My brain, I cannot wait to be done with this because I need to Google my second grade
Of course, your teacher.
music teacher.
Okay.
Like
well,
what is his name? Oh my gosh. Listen, we have one fan who emailed me a lot. Well, if he's still listening, if he's still a fan, Blake. We went to grade school together. What was his name?
Who taught you, Blake?
It's like Mr. Pacifico,
This is riveting for everyone. Everyone's on the edge of their
Isn't
seat.
it so funny how you just
Yeah, can't get past it.
it is driving me crazy because I know that I know it.
All thanks to Annabelle's while you
Okay.
think about your teacher.
No, I don't want to think about him anymore. I'll
Okay.
deal with it later.
I'd like to thank the following Annabelles for supporting our show. Thank you so much. Rayhan Cruz, Alan Lassiter, Angel Salazar.
That's a good name.
I think that's the name of a comic. What is going on? Shannon Genther, Trenton Boggs, Lonnie, Andrea Ray, Jessica Morgan Scott Moore.
Wait, was that two?
That was one. Jessica Morgan Scott Moore, hyphenated Scott Moore.
Oh, so maybe
first name Jessica, middle name Morgan, Scott Moore.
Oh, got it. I thought it was two people. I was so confused.
And then Fro Mitchell and Holly Pridgetel.
Well done. I would like to thank following Annabelles for continuing to support us on Patreon, getting those early episodes 1 week early, getting these shout outs, merch discounts, all the things. Megan Kincaid Heidel, Corey, PTACEK.
It's yours, teacher.
It is not. I almost had it. Corey, how is the P silent or the T silent? PT.
Probably the piece that would be silent.
Okay. Corey Tassick, Houston Holt, Jenny Harrell, Tommy Ruiz, Chris Staples, Bobo Jangleballs. Well done. Monica Scheidecker, Alicia Groves, and Alex Thomas.
Nice. Also, I like that I said confidently, like, oh yeah, the P silent. No idea. I just wanted to pick one just to have a pick.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then your spoopy shoutouts.
My spoopy shoutouts to Delia from Delia. Happy 40th birthday. This one's so sweet. To all the creeps and peepers out there from David. To anyone going through a tough time, hang in there. It may look bad now, but it will get better.
Aww.
I know, so sweet. To Killian from your mom, Lacey, happiest 19th birthday and congrats on your high school graduation. She graduated 10th out of 519 students.
Congrats.
Your family will miss you when you leave for college, but they're stoked to watch you grow. Proud of you, Goober. To Noah from your dad, Ron, congrats on all you've accomplished so far. Your future is so bright. I'm so proud of you and all your hard work. I love you. Noah was going to high school while taking college courses and then starts basic training this fall.
Oh, wow.
I know. I love these. These both are high school graduates, both Killian and Noah. And I just love this idea of these families listening to the show together and then giving them spoopy shout outs. It's so sweet.
Yeah. Kudos to both of you.
Yes. To Concha from Concha. These are two different people.
Okay.
They share the same nickname. I can't believe you're already 40. It's going to be the best decade ever. Here's to another 25 years of friendship. Maite Saizut. That is Basque for I love you.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully I didn't completely butcher that, but I think I got it. Maite Zaitut. And to Abby from Dan. Not this Dan, your Dan. Happy 28th birthday. I love hearing your giggles and gasps while you listen to Timesuck and Scared to Death.
Aw.
So sweet.
That is.
And that's it.
That's awesome. Well, thanks everyone for continuing to send in your personal tales of terror to mystory@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. You can email us for everything else at info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. Thanks to Logan Keith again for scoring today's show, to Heather Rylander for organizing the My Story emails, to book editor Drew Atana, polishing and preparing listener stories for book number 6. Also, thanks to Molly Box for finding the second story I shared this week. I was able to find the first. We are on Facebook and Instagram where we post pics that accompany episodes and more at Scared to Death Podcast. See if you think that lady actually got ate up by the moving sidewalk.
Honestly.
We have a private Facebook group called Creeps and Peepers, full of fellow horror lovers, moderated by the All-Seeing Eyes, who do a fantastic job of making our online community such a fun and welcoming place. Enjoy your nightmares, Creeps and Peepers. Hope you were scared to death.
Bye.
If spirits threaten me in this place, fight water by water and fire by fire. Banish their souls into nothingness and remove their powers until the last trace. Let these evil beings flee through time and space, Evil may pass through, but hath no home here within, scared to death.
Mad Magic Productions.
No. I didn't. It chose me. It rejected you. It chose me. That is not stealing.
Just the way it is.